For years, I've been saying that the main reason why I still keep using my iPhone is because I really like the Apple Watch. And it's no secret for people that have watched my videos over the past couple of years. And I've been dreaming about the opportunity to, be able to say that this is an actual product. The Google Pixel Watch is an actual thing, and I've been using it for the past 2 weeks, and honestly, I think it's pretty bad. And I think a lot of reviews and videos about this watch aren't really focusing about the underlying problem that I think this watch really brings to the top. And this entire video will mostly just focus on the problems. It does do some nice things, but I will only focus on reasons why you should not consider this watch and why I really feel like we are even further away from having an actual Apple Watch competitor after this thing has come to life. And without just beating around the bush, this entire video will come from a place of love. Someone that really, truly wanted this to be great. And even though I got it for free, not because Google sent it to me, but because I got it as a bonus with the Pixel 7 Pro, even then, I mean, it isn't worth it. And right off the bat, I'll focus first on the software and then on the hardware. This entire video will be much more talked, just more focused with you guys to really share why I really think it's an incapable product and why it makes crucial mistakes in very important areas that just shows the type of care and the type of attention that Google is putting into this coming into reality. And I got some notes here on my phone, and right off the bat, I'll focus on the Fitbit integration. Just Google bought Fitbit a couple years ago, and this is the first product to come out of that relationship. And what it creates is a position where this is basically a Fitbit watch. This isn't a Google anything. It is incompatible with Google Fit. If Google plans to merge Google Fit with Fitbit in the future, who knows if they can still do that or even do that legally speaking because of the way that Google handles data and health data and what that entails. But they have this Health Connect platform. It's an app that is supposed to merge the two systems and have like a common link that both can talk back and forth, but that isn't really available for Fitbit and doesn't really work. You can use third-party apps to sync your data between Fitbit and Google Fit, but even Google Fit in its current state is more or less, I would say, like 50% of what you can do with Apple Health, for example, or maybe even 25. The way that it displays the data, the way that you can analyze the trends, it is not spectacular. And more than that, Fitbit is a paid service. You get most of it for free, so you don't actually have to subscribe, and they give you 6 months, the classic drug dealer treatment, just get you enticed about some of the more premium features, which for them it's like classes like you can get with the Apple Watch on the Fitness Plus app, but then it's more data analyzing features that I don't think should really be behind a paywall ever. So you are already tracking these and they are already doing the calculations required for sleep trends past a week and to give you better insight about your actual data, but you will have to pay for that, and I think it's $7.99 a month after the 6 months period's ending. So I think that just creates a bad taste in everybody's mouth, and it just sets the tone for what the watch really is going to be. And even inside this small 2-week period, I've had multiple situations where the watch just lost connection to the phone and I had to reboot it. I don't know why. I had to even one time factory reset the watch to get it to pair again with the phone, which shouldn't really ever have to happen since you lose the data on the watch when you factory reset it and you can't really get that data out. This is a fitness tracker, a device that you use to track your fitness, but if you take it out for like a normal run, for example, you can't really have any specific metrics about how you run. You can only have stuff that's pretty basic, like total time, amount of kilometers run, average pace per kilometer, and splits that you're running on your kilometers, and different inclines with heart rate tracking. You can do how long your stride is, how many strides you're making per minute, heart rate recovery. You can't just focus on SpO2, for example, which is a good metric to focus about your cardiovascular health in general, and how you can convert that to speed and to increasing your speed. And I feel like all this data is, it's important data that if you're just starting out, you don't need to see it, you don't need to care about it. But if you keep at a sport for long enough, it's the small details and tracking the trends along the months that really helps with pushing you forward and helps with getting more regular about your exercise, and really just helps you do that exercise more often. And here it's very basic. Small things like if you go out for a run and you're listening to music, something that a lot of people do, you have to switch to the music app to adjust the volume. You can't do it inside the workout app, which is very challenging if you're just running outside. If you try to yell at Google to just increase the volume for you, the mic doesn't really pick your voice up when you're running outside on the wind. I've tried it multiple times, sounded like an absolute lunatic going down the street in the middle of the morning, just shouting, "Hey, Google, just do your thing," and it just didn't do anything. It's difficult, and it's small things like these that show me that they really didn't try much. And if you, for example, if you're a swimmer, you enjoy going to the pool, swimming a couple of laps and just tracking your progress in different styles, like if you're freestyling or backstrokes or just anything like that, you can't really track the specific styles that you're swimming and how fast you're doing those. It's just limited to swim, and then you have a timer on your watch whilst you swim. I guess that's fine, and it tracks your heart rate badly. Ever since I took this watch out of the box, it has been pretty good if I'm not working out, but if I'm running, it is absolutely terrible. And these findings have been perfectly aligned with a channel that I follow on YouTube that tests the scientific, it tries to plot a graph about the accuracy of these smart wearable devices when compared to a chest strap, and his findings perfectly align with what I'm finding when I'm using the Pixel Watch, which mostly tells me that if I'm running full tilt, giving it everything at the end of a 10K run, this guy will say my heart is at 155 to 160, whilst the Apple Watch usually tends to peak at around 190-ish, which much more aligns with what I'm feeling in my body and what I've tracked along the years. So whatever they're doing with their data here, it's just wrong. And even if it's completely strangling my wrist or if it's more loose, it doesn't really make much of a difference. It's inaccurate, and same thing goes for the GPS. I've took the watch out for runs, and consistently I got on around like a 6.5 kilometer run, I'll get like 200 or 300 meters of random mistakes. It would tell you that I jumped on a river, I did sharp turns when I didn't. It's too noisy the way that they record the GPS data and the way that they show it on the map, or I don't know, or the sensor isn't good enough. Something about the watch here is just not cutting it for my use, and just normal running, just going outside, clear skies, not really in the middle of the city. It's just completely not cutting it, unfortunately. And we haven't even talked about how bad the watch is at communicating with my phone. Small things like do not disturb on the phone should be do not disturb on the watch, but that doesn't happen. Bedtime mode on the phone doesn't really trigger bedtime mode on the watch, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. Sound profiles don't trigger, alarms don't sync, everything is separate, and they just share a small trend of communication that seems to only happen with certain functions, which further adds to how disconjointed the watch is in normal day-to-day use. And I haven't even talked about the small things, the nitpicks, the small inconsistencies. Things like the heart rate measure is constantly going, even if it's not on my wrist, it keeps going. Who knows why? And when it's on my wrist, it tracks your heart rate every second. But even if you wanted that crazy level of detail about your heart rate, you can't really see it very well on the Fitbit app. It just becomes noise. It's too much and uses a lot of battery, which, you know, I'll touch on that a little bit later in the video. Small things like if you scroll on the watch with the Crown, you have zero inertia, which means in the menus, if you're just trying to scroll, you end up scrolling a ton to watch, to just scroll very little, which, you know, it just feels like no one tried it. No one used it and thought it would be good. Someone looked at this and thought, this is a good idea. I mean, touch targets are very small on the display, very tiny. Sometimes you have to type and it's borderline impossible. So I don't see the point. And there's no customization of the accent color on the watch. It's just lime green everywhere. Not sure why lime green, but it's lime green everywhere. A lot of UI elements are square boxes in a completely round watch with round elements everywhere. They just tend to stick out a bit too much, which just feels weird. And the entire UI feels like it's a square where they cut the corners and not really a round watch. The way that they display things around the bezel, it's very, very limited. It's everything in the center, like it was a square, but just smaller. And all that looks particularly weird in apps like the camera remote shutter, which is laggy, absolutely atrocious quality. You can barely see what's there, and worse than that, it cuts the corners, cuts the bottom. It just looks bad, and they could do this back in 2014 on the Moto 360. So I don't get what happens. Like, we got into a time portal, 8 years have passed, and it just nothing changed or even got worse for some reason. The speaker is remarkably tinny. It's very small, no low end, no bass, no nothing, and it's very low volume, which I feel like it's a problem even for normal phone calls that you sometimes want to take. The assistant sounds tinny when coming out of it, so it just feels like it's a missed opportunity. I see multiple places around the watch where there's like a residue or like a glue sticking out. That's probably part of the water resistant seal, but doesn't really inspire me with too much confidence to dunk this in water if I can see some sort of sealant coming on outside. But you know, that might have been just my unit. All this took me 2 weeks to notice. They've been developing this watch for years, and in 2 weeks I make a list of small nitpicks that probably could have all been fixed, but they haven't fixed it. And probably the main reason for that is this watch should have been released years ago. The perfect example of that is the SoC that they use here is the same as the original Samsung Galaxy Watch from 2018. It's a 10 nanometer chip in a watch that's coming out in 2022. I mean, Samsung has newer chips. If they're the partner for Google to make this watch, why not use the latest? Why use a 4-year-old chip that wasn't really fast to begin with and isn't really fast now in a watch that's coming out in 2022 for $339? I mean, I don't know what to say anymore. And somehow amongst all this, they took the time to make a hand washing app trying to mimic what Apple did on their watch, where it detects when you're washing your hands and it just starts a timer with some bubbles, and when it finishes it gives you big claps. Well done, you washed your hands. But on the Pixel Watch you have to navigate to the app drawer, manually activate this hand washing app to automatically start a 20-second timer for you to wash your hands. Who thought that was a good idea? I mean, it just shows the type of things that they're trying to do and the type of things that they decided not to do for whatever reason. And it's around the hardware that I really conclude that this watch shouldn't really be bought in its current state, because no matter how many upgrades they do to the software and how much better it gets on the software side, the hardware will be a problem sooner than later, because it's a problem now. Yes, it does look pretty good, and if you're wondering if the bezels are a problem, they're not. For my surprise, they're massive, but you don't really see them too much and they don't get in the way, which I find fantastic. But the crown wobbles and there's a cutout on the screen, and some people have already broken the screen because of the way that they moved the crown. It cracked the glass above it, and I don't know, it's just this crown feels like a mistake. Same thing goes for the placement of the button on top of the crown. It's on top, it's difficult to reach because of the way that it's slanted and goes against your wrist. So at the same time, you click it and it activates the recent apps, and you double click it and it goes back to the recent app. You hold it, it triggers assistant. And the crown function isn't really, it feels like the crown and the button are flipped. It feels like if you wanted to trigger assistant, you would hold the crown, but if you hold the crown, you turn off the watch. If you wanted to pay, for example, sure, you can double tap the top button, but currently if you double tap the top button, it goes back to the previous app. If you double tap the crown, it goes into the payment, which used much less often, and I don't know, it just feels like a mistake and something that shouldn't really have been done this way. And all of this, and I haven't even touched on the battery, which, after all this, it just feels like the problem that some people are ignoring, but more importantly, it feels like a problem that people aren't really thinking about well enough. For example, I can squeeze 24 hours out of this. You can't enable always on display and expect 24 hours. It is pretty much 28 hours at absolute best scenarios with minimal notifications and not working out at all. But the thing is, if this is with a new watch, this is as good as it's gonna get. When they start adding more functionality in the software, the battery will take a dip, and there's no margin for that dip to happen without the watch becoming a 2 or a 3 times charging during the day, particularly if you want to track your sleep, which is a main key appeal of these smart wearables, and something that this watch does fairly well. So it just feels like there's no margin. I've been using my Apple Watch for years. It's the Series 4. Apple has been complacent about the way that they're improving your watch because they feel like they don't have competition, and it's attempts like these that make me sad and frustrated about the state of the industry, because my watch, it's 4 years old at this point. I haven't replaced the battery. It's aged pretty badly and lasts a day in best case scenarios, but that's it. It's a almost 4-year-old watch that lasts a day. This will be e-waste in a year or two, because even though it does look great, what it represents is a mismatch of perspectives and opinions and software decisions and inconsistencies that at the end of the day create a product that feels just like any other smartwatch that has ever come before it for Android. It feels like a worse Samsung Galaxy watch. It feels like a worse Huawei watch, even in the sensor department particularly. It feels like nothing that I would ever want in a product. For example, Apple isn't perfect, of course. Their products have problems and they're far, far, far away not the cheapest option, but the fact that I can get an Apple Watch by a $5 app that's Health Fit, that gives you much more information about your workouts than the default activities app and the fitness app, and just with those two things, I can get as much information about my training, my trends, and everything in between, and sync it to other services. For example, I sync my runs to Strava, and I sync my runs as a backup, even to Google Fit, for example. And you can't do any of that here, and even for the basic functionality, you'd have to pay, Google expects you to pay for Fitbit Premium. It's not necessary. I get it. You don't have to pay it, but it's the thought. It's how they see this product maturing into the future. It's what they expect people to actually do with this watch. It's what they want you to do, is to pay for premium to justify developing this watch further. And it's because of things like this that it feels like we're further and further away from what I wanted this product to be. A legitimate Apple Watch competitor that feels part of your phone and part of Android, and not something else that's tacked on the side and that you use when you work out. Because for that, solutions have been out for years. This absolutely is not a good product in my humble opinion, and I loved the idea of this watch for years, but now that it's here, I hate it. And it took me 2 weeks to decide to make this video in this form. It took me 2 weeks to decide that I'm not gonna make a pretty script, I'm not gonna make a full of B-roll video, I'm gonna make a true video about my actual experience with this product that has made me question why I like wearables, why I like my Apple Watch, and why I like Google and their products. It's just, I don't know, it just feels wrong, feels inconsistent, feels like I've told myself something for years, that I love Google, love their products, and want to use them as soon as possible to encourage further development on them, but it just feels like I've bet on the wrong horse, and this is what we got. The Pixel Watch, I don't know. Oh, consider subscribing. Usually videos are a bit more cheerful than this, but they are as detailed, if not more detailed, about other products that I actually love. All right, bye. Ja. Ta ett grip.